The exit planning process, I think we have to break it down into two different segments. The first is, what is exit planning to a business owner? And then secondly, what is the exit planning process for the advisors who are going to help the business owner go through exit planning? For the owner, and I'm going to reference back my Friday clients, they had no planning. So for an owner, exit planning means the creation of a plan and a strategy that, when executed, allows the owner to leave his or her business when they want to on their terms and conditions. Well, what are those terms and conditions? They're things like, when do I want to leave? How much money am I going to need when I leave my business? Who do I want to transfer my business to? What other objectives might I want to accomplish in leaving my business? I may want to do something for my community, civic, charitable, something for my kids, something for my employees. Whatever that is, that forms the nucleus or the goal of what exit planning is all about, which is to help the business owner leave his or her business on their terms and their conditions, whatever that is. So for business owners, when we talk to them about exit planning, that's what they need to know initially. Well, for advisors, it's different. We need to know all of this, but we have to have a process that begins with understanding what they want and need, and then goes on a step-by-step basis through the creation of a written plan, through the implementation of that plan. And this often might take 5 or 10 years. It will involve a number of different advisors. So without a process that we'll talk more about, it's very difficult to actually complete an exit plan, because it sounds complicated, it sounds complex, but through process, through having a system, an orderly system, we can accomplish the right thing at the right time by the right professional that yields a great result for our clients. And it's not confusing and it's not complex. It can't be, or our owners aren't going to go through with it. So we've created something that really is pretty straightforward. So exit planning for owners, we need to talk more about and understand their thinking, their fears, and their wants. And then for us as advisors, we need to understand what's involved in actually helping our clients and the other involved advisors go through this in an orderly and efficient way. A really good question you're probably thinking about is, what is my role in this whole exit planning process? What does a financial professional and insurance professional do? And again, I would break that down into two different categories. One is your role as a financial and insurance professional, and the other one, which I would like you to consider, is your role as an exit planning advisor. They're different, but they're very compatible. Why is it important for you to be anything other than an insurance advisor or anything other than a financial advisor? Because we are going to go through some slides and you will see that there are a number of different activities that tools and products that you will use in the exit planning process as an insurance and financial advisor or professional. It has nothing to do with you being an exit planning advisor. There's a lot for you to do. So you don't necessarily have to become an exit planning advisor to do a lot of work in the exit planning arena. I want to make that really clear. What you would need to do in that scenario, though, is to work with somebody who is trained and is knowledgeable about this exit planning process so that you are involved in the process as that insurance professional or as that financial professional. Well, if that's the case, why would you consider becoming an exit planning advisor? I want to talk about a couple different insurance advisors who I've worked with for a long time. The first one, let's call him Jim. I'm going to change his name to protect the guilty. He came to me a number of years ago when I was practicing law, and he said, "John, I've got this client who is bringing in another owner. I'd like you to work with him." So we got involved with him, and Jim was the insurance advisor and also handled the small 401k plan that this rather small company had. Well, over a period of about a half a dozen years, the business grew in value. The owners decided to sell the business. We were hired to sell the business for them. We sold the business for them. for $42 million. It was a great result for the business owner. After the closing occurred, I went back to the owner and I asked him, well, now that we've got all of this money, it was a cash closing, let's go back to Jim because we're going to have to invest this money, and you have a lot of additional insurance needs that now need to be taken care of because of this enhanced wealth that you have. And we'd done very little estate planning. And the owner looked at me and he said, why would I do that? Why would I go back to Jim? And so I thought for a minute, I thought, well, Jim hadn't been involved in this process. He referred a client in to me. We did the business planning. We sold the business for $42 million. Jim hadn't been involved in that at all. And as an insurance professional or a financial professional, it's difficult to be involved in that process because for most people, most of us, we don't even know that sale process is going on. So as a result, the client, once he had all of this money, didn't feel any loyalty. He didn't have a relationship with the insurance advisor, and that was it. So it was partly my fault, and that's why I feel a little guilty about this. Knowing what I know now, 25 years later, I could have kept that insurance advisor more involved in the process, but nevertheless, there's just not a huge role for an insurance or even a financial advisor to play as an insurance or financial advisor in the third-party sale process in a lot of the actual transaction or transfer of ownership. The second scenario, the second insurance advisor, the story goes like this. This advisor's name is Rick. He is a BEI member. He's embedded in a property and casualty firm, and he'd been trying to deal and work with a fairly wealthy business owner in his area, unsuccessfully. Couldn't get him to do any financial planning, couldn't get him to do any life insurance planning, and he had a significant company. He comes to our boot camp. He learns about the exit planning process, learns about how to sell the business to insiders and outsiders and things like that, goes back to this business owner and says, listen, I know you're not interested in financial planning or even insurance planning, but I can also help you devise a plan to leave your business someday. And the owner thought for a second and said, well, I've just been approached by a third-party buyer out of the blue who wants to buy my company for $35 million. Well, Rick at this point had learned about the exit planning process and the sales process, and he said, that's great. What we should consider doing is working with an investment banker that I can have you contact, or I can contact for you, to see if that's the appropriate value and if that's really what you want to do, if that's consistent with your objectives and so on. So that was all done. The long story, which I could go on for a long time, is that business was sold for $85 million cash. Rick today has $65 million of assets under management from that one case and has sold a lot of second-to-die life insurance because we have a very significant estate now. I realize those are large companies and probably great examples, and most of our clients don't have value anything close to that. But nevertheless, there is this opportunity in exit planning for insurance advisors and professional advisors to be involved in this process, and we will talk about the role as that advisor plays in exit planning. But also, I think it's important to appreciate the importance of being the person who facilitates and guides this planning process, because you're going to be there through the entire process. Maybe not solely in your role as an insurance or financial professional, but in your role also as the advisor who is facilitating the creation and implementation and full execution of a plan that gets an owner from where he or she is today to where they want to be.